At issue this Sunday morning, the government shutdown. Who will get the blame? And how much do shutdowns like this affect the average taxpayer? And the race for New Jersey governor heats up. One poll shows the race tightening, others show the Democrat leading. Could Republicans pull off an upset in this traditionally blue state?
NBC10 at Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. The U.S. government officially shut down this past week after Congress failed to reach a deal on a new spending plan. One place in our area where the impact of the shutdown has been visible, Independence National Historical Park. The shutdown meant national parks were partially open with open-air sites available to the public where you can walk around, but buildings that are typically staffed closed. Joining us now are two longtime political insiders from either side of the political divide. Larry Seisler is a Democrat. He's the founder of Seisler Media and Issue Advocacy. And Guy Shiraki is a Republican who previously ran for Congress, and he's now a columnist for Broad and Liberty. Thank you both for being here. It's great to see both of you, gentlemen.
Good morning. Great to be here.
So let's start with where we are right now in this moment. As we are recording this and sitting here at this moment, the government, the federal government, is in a shutdown. Larry, I'll start with you. Who's going to get the blame for getting us here?
Well, I don't think there are really any winners in this. And you can go through a lot of different metrics on who it's going to be. A lot of people will say, well, it's the Republicans because they control all the branches of government. And then some people will say, well, it's the Democrats because, you know, they wouldn't give them the extra votes for the 60. But I think at the end of the day, I think everybody loses because I don't think a government shutdown really benefits anybody. I mean, the Democrats, I think they're feeling sort of a desperation because it's their only way to fight back and prove a point. But no, I don't think anybody wins.
Okay.
Well, I agree with Larry. I think everybody loses at the margins. Somebody, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, somebody may get a win that counts as like a 2 if they win the debate of what this is about. I mean, the Democrats' argument is largely the Republicans run everything. But for people who know what works, know that the Senate, you need 60 votes. And the Republicans don't have 60 votes. They need Democratic help. And if the Democrat demand is to spend, you know, essentially $1 trillion more and refight the fight over whether folks that are illegal immigrants can get Medicare, they're going to lose. But largely everybody loses. It's really just a case of who can minimize the damage. And I think it's another case, this is why a lot of voters tune out. They just see that things aren't working. And that's why I think ultimately Larry's right.
Well, voters have been seeing a lot of this kind of thing here in Pennsylvania recently because as we sit here, we still don't have a budget in Pennsylvania. What does all of this say to voters, you know, who are going to the polls and electing people and paying them, and then they can't get simple things like a budget done?
The difference is in Pennsylvania, people don't feel it the way when the federal government shuts down, because there's going to be some immediate implications. When we don't have a budget, you really don't start to see things. You have some school districts, they're going to have to borrow money. And
pre-K programs, that kind of thing. They're feeling it.
There's really, except for sort of how it's viewed that politicians can't get things done, it's just not the same. But, you know, guys old enough, just like me, that you can remember back in the days that they would have these fights in Harrisburg, but then a few people would get in a room, Democrats and Republicans, and they would work it out because they would basically come to the conclusion, this is not good for any of us.
Why isn't it working that way this time? I mean, we even had this, obviously we had the big fight about transit funding and SEPTA, and that was certainly a case where people were feeling it as those cuts were made in SEPTA that ultimately were reversed after the court case. But then the sort of transit funding was taken out of the equation and still nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we fought for 3 months. The entire state budget, $50 billion, was put on hold. State police, parks, service, prisons, everything was put on hold for SEPTA. Then the governor woke up one day and said, never mind. I'll fix it. I'll move some money around. Look, I think that this just further emphasizes how far apart the parties are. You know, Larry and I were talking earlier. This is not a group of people, as you referenced, not a group of people sitting in a room saying, how do we fix this? They have truly fundamental disagreements on what government should look like, what the priority should be, how money should be spent. That's why it's so hard. It's not 10 people sitting in a room and saying, how much money should we spend on prisons? It is a fundamental disagreement on how much money to spend or not. The Democrats in Harrisburg would like to spend money because they think we should spend the savings because there's emergency circumstances. The Republicans are trying to slow growth because they don't want to go into deficit spending. They disagree on school choice. These are really fundamental things, and it's hard to say, you know, I'll give you something, you give me something. I think it just further highlights how far apart the parties are. We're seeing it in Pennsylvania, we're seeing it in D.C. The two parties have very different goals. They have very different priorities. And when your priorities and goals are so fundamentally different, there's almost no area for compromise. It's why I think the Republicans in both cases have tried to say, can we at least keep the lights on? Let's do bare budget spending, keep government functioning while we have our fight. And the Democrats seem to have not wanted to do that. But at the end of the day, as Larry said, nobody really notices because the trains keep running and the parks are still open and people get their checks.
Talking about the Pennsylvania budget, given the differences in the parties, but if we were not politically in a situation like we are right now with the governor's race on the horizon, do you think we'd be in this situation?
Sure, because we've had it the last 2 years. I mean, this is in Pennsylvania, it's Groundhog Day again. We haven't really had a budget passed on time in years. I mean, this is the third year in a row with Governor Shapiro, the budget's going to be late. I mean, I would say we're only at October. I mean, you know, last year it wasn't passed till December.
Well, part of it was.
Is the governor's race part of it? Yeah, but again, they fundamentally disagree on how much money to spend. They fundamentally disagree on how it should be spent. It was like SEPTA. Everybody knows the SEPTA issue could have been resolved if SEPTA would have agreed to reforms. The SEPTA issue could have been resolved if the Democrats gave in on school choice. The Republicans were willing to trade school choice for SEPTA, and the Democrats said no. If you're not willing to, you know, I'll do something you need, I'll do something you want, and that's how we agree. If they're not willing to do that, I don't know where compromise comes from.
Larry?
No, I was just going to say, I think it has a lot to do with Governor Shapiro running for re-election and whatever his aspirations are, should he be re-elected. And I think that they have a target, a political target on him. They look at what happened in the last election with Mastriano, that was just a bad choice.
The Republican nominee
right.
last
and
night.
I think that they just want to make, you know, Governor Shapiro, you know, look bad and pay. And I mean, but Guy is right about, could they trade SEPTA funding for what was basically a pilot program for vouchers? They could, but there's just these philosophical differences that just does not allow people to do it. And we also now have a greater geographical divide than we've ever had in Pennsylvania. I mean, I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, okay? And sure, there was always an East versus West thing going on, but not like today with SEPTA. You know, you have these Republicans in the middle of the state. Why are we paying for SEPTA? But the fact is, SEPTA is an economic driver, and SEPTA was willing to reform and whatever, and hopefully they will continue to be. But you just have, you know what? You just don't. The people in politics, a lot of the people today, it's a different type of cat, basically.
Still ahead, one of the most closely watched political races in the country is right here in our area. Could Republicans win the governor's race in traditionally blue New Jersey? Our panel weighs in on that coming up.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
A poll from late last month shows the New Jersey governor's race as a dead heat, with Democrat Mayk and Republican Jack Ciattarelli both getting 43%. The survey from Emerson College finds 11% of voters undecided. But we should note, another recent public poll showed the race differently, with Cheryl leading by 8 points.
NBC's Steve Kornacki analyzes the state of the race.
All right, we know New Jersey is a blue state, but Republicans have made gains in the two most recent statewide elections. We're going back here to 2020. Just show you, remember, Joe Biden crushed Trump here by 16 points. But what happened the next year, 2021? Jack Ciattarelli, this was the last time he was running for governor. he only lost by 3 points. He made big improvements in 2021 compared to Trump in 2020. And then Trump himself last year in New Jersey, he lost the state by a little bit less than 6 points. Again, Trump made big improvements in 2024 compared to that low water mark in 2020. So 2 straight elections for Republicans statewide with 2 big improvements in New Jersey. Interestingly, though, they're not improving in the same areas in those 2 elections. Chitterelli and Trump each made big gains, but they made gains with different voters in different places. Show you what I mean here. These are the places where Chitterelli made really big gains in that 2021 campaign, where Trump really didn't make many or any gains at all in 2024. And you notice here, the areas where Chitterelli really outperformed Trump, more heavily white, higher income. You know, look at this, higher concentration of college degrees. A good example of this kind of place would be, this is a suburban township, Chatham, New Jersey, suburb of New York City. And you can see here, look, Trump got blown out here last year by Kamala Harris. Chitterelli actually carried it when he ran for governor last time. Again, heavily white, very high income, extremely high concentration of college degrees, the type of voter we've seen that Trump has really struggled with nationally. They were willing to vote for Chitterelli, not willing to vote for Trump. Now, Trump was not president in 2021 when Chitterelli won a place like Chatham Township. Trump, of course, is president now. So what will those voters do? Are they still going to be comfortable voting for Chitterelli with Trump back in the White House? Or are they going to be looking to send a message to Trump and the Republicans and vote against Chitterelli? Other side of it, where did Trump make much bigger gains than Chitterelli? Well, last year when Trump got close in New Jersey, he did it in places that were heavily non-white, lower income, more blue collar, lower concentration of college degrees. Good example of this kind of place would be Union City. This is across the Hudson River from New York City. And again, Trump lost it, but he only lost by 17 points. Compare that to Chitterelli. He lost Union City by 70. And again, this is 82% Hispanic. It's a much lower mean household income than we saw in Chatham. Much lower concentration of college degrees. The question for Chitterelli and for Republicans is, can they make gains in places like this through an association with Trump without also hurting themselves in places like Chatham Township, where that connection with Trump has not necessarily been a good thing?
Our bipartisan panel also talked about where things stand in the governor's race. Here's that part of our conversation.
We're into October now, which is really the key month when folks really start paying attention. You start seeing the ads. They're out there traveling the state, and we had this situation recently with some records from Congresswoman Mayk Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, that were released. Republicans trying to tie her to a cheating scandal at the Naval Academy when she was a student there. Some unredacted documents, records from her time there were released, and sort of they're going back and forth on this. But it occurs to me that ultimately when we got into this race, everybody was talking about affordability. Everybody was talking about how much things cost in New Jersey. And this has really gotten off of that. So I wonder, do you think that it's going to have any effect on the race?
I think it'll have some effect. Look, New Jersey has a history. It's basically a Democratic state. We can debate whether it's navy blue or powder blue, but it's a Democrat state. But every 10, 15 years, the voters in New Jersey bring in a Republican as governor when they sense that things are off course. We've seen it with Christie, with Whitman, with Kaine, every so often. I get the sense that in New Jersey, most voters think things just aren't right. And this is probably where Jack Chitterelli has his best chance. I would not be surprised if he won. I think the problem with Mayk Sherrill is that she's really not known. If you're a known quantity and something comes up, it really doesn't move your voters. She's not really known. Nobody in South Jersey knows her. Her record's not really known. She won the primary by sort of being the loudest voice against Donald Trump. So these little blips along the way, I think they hurt her more because she doesn't have a base of support. People don't really know her. Again, I think people in New Jersey think things are off course. I think Chitterelli's well positioned to be it. If this was Pennsylvania, I'd say the race was over. But it's New Jersey. They have more Democrats, but I'd still bet a nickel on Jack.
Well, first of all, Chitterelli, I think, is actually a good candidate. I mean, he's really good on TV. I was impressed, when he ran 4 years ago.
And came close.
Yeah. But, with Sherrill, I think that was a really cheap shot on the cheating scandal, releasing things that should not have been released. I mean, she didn't walk with her class, right? Mm-hmm. But she served, so that didn't.
She said she didn't turn people in, basically.
Right.
That was why.
Yes, that's right. She wasn't going to do that. So I think she's a very strong candidate. I don't think she was the loudest voice against Trump. My God, there were some really far left people in that primary. I think being the sole woman in that primary was probably helpful. She's been a good member of Congress. So I think she should win. I saw a poll the other day that shows her 8 points up. But again, Citarelli is a very strong candidate.
How much do you think what happens in Washington over the next 5 weeks will have an impact on the outcome of that race?
Well, that's interesting because, again, are people in New Jersey going to blame one party or the other? But look, they got issues in New Jersey. I mean, you got very high property taxes in New Jersey, and I do think at the end of the day, affordability is a big issue there.
Larry Seisler, Guy Shiraki, thank you so much. Great to see both of you. Have you ever wanted to give your own TED Talk? Here's your chance to do it right here in Philadelphia. Ahead, the search for speakers and how you can apply.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Examining democracy's past, present, and future right here in the city where our democracy began. As part of next year's celebrations of America's 250th birthday, Visit Philadelphia and TED are collaborating to create a one-day event at the Kimmel Center for the Performing Arts. They are looking for speakers to give their own TED Talks about the history of democracy and where it's headed. So if you have an idea, they want to hear from you. Well, joining us now for more about this project is Angela Val, the president and CEO of Visit Philadelphia. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this. This event is set for June. Tell us about the kinds of speakers you are looking for.
Yes, this event is actually set for June 13th of 2026. We are looking for 15 speakers, and we're looking throughout the entire world. This will be speakers that are seasoned thought leaders, academics, but also an everyday person. Whether you're an American citizen or a citizen in another country, we want to hear from you.
So the whole world, that doesn't mean that Philadelphia's got a little edge or anything like that?
It has a little bit of edge. I mean, we are America's birthplace and the birthplace of American modern-day democracy. So there's no better place to have that conversation on the 250th anniversary of this country than here in Philadelphia.
So your theme, if I'm correct, is Founding Futures.
Yes.
How should people interpret that? What exactly does that mean? And what kinds of ideas are you looking for?
We are looking to talk about the future of democracy, what it means to people today and what it will mean for us going forward. And we also want to hear from people, not just on that day, but leading up to TED Democracy event in June of next year.
When we think about 2026, we know that there's so much going on in the city and in the region next year. How are you hoping that this will fit in with everything else and sort of complement things?
You know, in 1776, this was a place of a lot of political discourse. And having that conversation here again in Philadelphia on our 250th anniversary is something we think Philadelphia should be doing in addition to all the parties and all the things that we will be celebrating. Talking about our past and how it will help us shape our future is a really important discussion to have.
So tell me how people can apply and then sort of what the process is that they will go through.
Yes. So we've taken ads out all over the world in different newspapers here throughout the United States. And you can go to our website where you will be able to fill out a form that has your democracy idea, the TED Talk that you would like to give. And that submission will be reviewed by a team of folks. Everyone is weighted the same, whether you're a seasoned TED speaker or somebody who just has an idea, a bold idea that they would like to share. Once you are selected, we're looking to select 15 of them. You will then work with the TED organization over a 5-month period so they can help script your story.
5 months. So this is a process, and at the end of it,
will be 15 amazing speakers on the main stage at the Kimmel Center giving their talk in front of an audience of roughly about 2,000 people. We hope to also have these talks go throughout the U.S. and be live streamed through public libraries in all 50 states and the 6 territories. They will also become TED Talk videos that everybody is used to seeing that will live far beyond 2026, that can be shared in classrooms and can be shared well into the future.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing what you find. Angela Vow from Visit Philadelphia. We'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And for more information about TED Democracy Philadelphia and how you can apply to give your own TED Talk on democracy, tap the NBC10 app or head to NBC10.com/finditon10.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Before we wrap up this edition of NBC10 at Issue, a reminder, you can see more of my interviews with lawmakers, candidates, political insiders, and voters by subscribing to my Battleground Politics podcast. Episodes are streaming now on NBC10.com, the NBC10 app, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube page, or you can listen while on the go, wherever you get your podcasts. That does it for this edition of NBC10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.